Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Carl Henry.
Hello, welcome to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. Folks, many of us have heard or will be familiar with self-love. In theory, we know exactly what it is, but how hard is it to put into practice and make it part of your daily life? Well, this week I'm delighted to be joined by Fiona Brennan, clinical hypnotherapist and double author of 2 books, The Self-Love Habit and The Positive Habit. And she's here to tell us why we need to love ourselves a little bit more and how it can improve so many aspects of our lives. Fiona, all the way from Greece, how's it going?
It's going hooray, as they say in Greece. It's going fantastic, Carl. Delighted to be with you.
Well, you're not singing ABBA, so we're doing well. We're doing well. Not just yet.
Mamma mia.
So come here to me. Tell us, I want to know a bit more about what you do. You've been on with us before, and I'd love to bring you into our audience and just explain a little bit about what a clinical hypnotherapist actually does for people.
Well, Carl, I specialise in helping people with stress and anxiety and low self-esteem. And the reason I do that, I suppose, is because it's something I really understand on a personal level as well as a professional level. So I've got a wealth of experience in helping people to feel calmer and more confident. And the hypnotherapy aspect of it is something that is really like a very powerful tool that allows me or any clinical hypnotherapist to access the subconscious. So I work really on 2 levels. Like a psychotherapist will work on a conscious level, which I do as well with my clients and in all of my work. However, I also work on that deeper subconscious, which is where my hypnotherapy, my audios really start to reinforce the practice for people to make a significant change in their brains. And there's a lot of research now, and the work of Dr. Andrew Huberman, whom I really admire, is a really strong advocate for the power of hypnosis and how it is one of the most really beneficial ways to make change quite quickly, but it needs repetition for it to be sustained. And I think that's one thing, when we hear about hypnosis and hypnotherapy, it has this really sort of, you just click your fingers and everything changes and it's very much this sort of quick fix. That is not the case. And I really work hard to get that message across, Carl, that it is actually something like anything in life, like any training that we do, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's yoga, it is the repetition that actually creates the results. And to maintain the results, we need to continue the activity. So in my case, listening to your audios, listening to your hypnotherapy, even when you are, let's say, loving yourself more, then you want to maintain that and you want to continue. So it's a wonderful tool. It's transformed my life. It's transformed the life of literally thousands of my clients over the years. So I'm really, I just love it. I really do.
So it's a form of training. It's like training for a marathon or training for anything else. It's repetition, it's consistency, and it's just training your mind or your subconscious to be able to work on the things that you want to work on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like to describe it, Carl, as the most honest placebo that you'll ever receive, because we have such powerful minds. Like, we are all so much more capable, let's say, than we give ourselves credit for. And our imagination is a really powerful tool. So people who suffer from anxiety and stress often will imagine the worst possible scenarios, catastrophizing outcomes. And that is understandable. It's the negativity bias in the brain, I'm sure you've heard of, and I hope your listeners have as well, that sense of how we're conditioned to give our attention to the negative. So in order to actually really, I wouldn't say combat that, but I would say to work with that, we want to, like a torch, when you shine a torch in the direction of where you want to see, you want to use your mind in that way. And the imagination is a way where we can also imagine the best possible outcome. We can actually see things, visualize things for ourselves of how we want to show up in the world, how we want to how we want to feel, how we want to be, how we want to behave. So there is a lot of accountability also involved, not just wishful thinking. And that's where we get both the conscious and the subconscious. They're sort of like the perfect marriage, if you like. When you have both of those working together, you really have a good chance of maintaining positive emotional and mental health.
Okay, so it's very much along the lines of the kind of manifesting concept and the vision boarding concept, but it's with a little bit more work than just that.
Yeah, and it's also like I listened to your podcast a few weeks ago with Susan Kane, and about the power of sadness, for example. So it isn't this case of just manifesting or trying to the law of attraction of what you want, but it's really about the deeper psychological work as well of embracing the parts of ourselves that we find hardest to love, whether that is anxiety, anger, fear, jealousy. These parts of ourselves that we're very ashamed of are actually very important to learn about ourselves and pointers of how we need to really love ourselves more and care for ourselves.
That brings me nicely on to what I want to chat about next, which is that self love, right? We've heard about it, we've chatted to people about it. It's a very topical thing to chat about, I think, for people. Yet, we really struggle to put it into practice. Why do you think, why do we struggle so much with the idea of it? Are we scared of it? Is it the word? What are people's barriers in terms of actually, practicing some self love?
I think there are many, Carl. Like the first thing is, I would say we're actually taught, especially in Ireland, we're almost taught the opposite, right? That it is a negative thing to love yourself. This idea that you could eat yourself if you were a bar of chocolate, or you're too big for your boots. There's so many connotations that it is something to hide rather than to sort of, illustrate or show. So essentially, with that in mind, that it's something we're not taught, it is actually, when you start to explore it, it's really important to see the difference between self-love and self-pity. And they're black and they're white, the difference. Because when you look at love, whether it's for yourself or for anybody else in this world, your family, any other creature or being, it is actually about, compassion, and compassion is love in action. So when we're in a state of self-pity, we tend to be, going down a spiral and we're wallowing, and that is not helpful to ourselves at all. So what we want to do is actually create a sense of, first of all, acceptance for ourselves, which is the very beginning of transformation from, let's say, self-loathing, which, Carl, I have to say, unfortunately, I have seen just an abundance of in my work over the years, where people are beyond cruel to themselves, and it's heartbreaking to listen to and to see, because the voice in their mind is conditioned to be judgmental. And we want to really help a person. In my work, what I really want to do is start with self-acceptance. Because until we accept ourselves, we're not going to be able to love ourselves. It has to be organic, and it has to be something that comes naturally. And acceptance is just, I really feel and know and believe in the power that it has to transform somebody from a place of really strong negativity into a place of being at peace with themselves, being at peace and at ease with who they are as they are, and not how they think they should be, in terms of external success.
And that acceptance goes, both I suppose, the positive and slightly more negative aspects of one's personality too, isn't it? And that can be harder to do with, emotions like anger or resentment or anything like that. It can be harder to accept yourself from that aspect.
Absolutely. It's like Socrates once said, and here I am in the land of Greece, and he said, the parts, those who are hardest to love are the most difficult of all. Do you know what I mean? It's hardest to love the people who need it most. And that's true also in ourselves, that the parts of ourselves that we really feel uncomfortable with are the very parts that we're trying to push away, to repress, or to feel shame for. And essentially, the real work is actually seeing the joy that these parts can offer us, that it is a misconception to believe that once we're free of that, for example, let's say anxiety in this case, once we're not anxious anymore, we're going to be, or sad or whatever it might be, that we're going to be free. Because that's not that's unrealistic. We have these emotions that are both positive and negative, and we want to be able to embrace both within ourselves. And ultimately, Carl, it's the most selfless act of all, because when you can do that for yourself, and I've experienced this personally, when you can do that, when you can be at peace with these parts that you were once ashamed of, you are really able to do it for the people you love. So it transforms your relationships. You are able to tolerate and accept, whether it's your partner's insecurities, whether it's your partner's fears, or your children or your parents, or, particularly those closer relationships that can be triggers for people. You can actually just be there as this unconditional acceptance of who they are, and not how you want them to be or not how you think they should be, but opening up to this awareness of unconditional love. And I think it's really helpful if anyone of your listeners here have had a person like that in their life, to actually draw upon that energy. Personally, I had a beautiful aunt called Auntie Lally, and Auntie Lally was, to me, I think underneath it all, she taught me about self-love. Because no matter what kind of mood I was in, whether I was, sort of like being difficult, or, crying or sad or joyful or giggly, there was just this unbelievable presence and acceptance. And that stays with a person. Now, not everybody has an Auntie Lally in their lives. I was very, very fortunate to have that experience. But if one, even having, a beautiful dog, a lot, that's why we love our dogs, because they love us regardless, right? But grandparents can often offer that as well. So I think that it's useful to actually draw upon that and remember, what is that like to be with a person who truly accepts you as you are, and then replicate that within your own internal world, so that you can use the energy to actually create it inside you. So it's quite a spiritual thing, but it's also a physical thing in terms of, how we feel emotion in the body, and remembering what it's like to feel so safe with somebody else or another creature.
Folks, you're listening to Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. Fiona, is there a difference between, I suppose, practicing self-love, but also being too confident or overconfident, or to be seen as being cocky?
Well, yes, of course there is. I mean, to be honest, Carl, like they're just such different things, because, if you're being too cocky or, overconfident, let's say, you've gone into the realms of the ego, right? You're operating from, let's say, external achievements, like, look what I have, look what I've done, look what I've achieved. Whereas self-love is really that much more contentment with oneself as one is. So not looking for external validation. So you can love yourself and be, the quietest person in the room without the need for attention, or without the need to be, for example, a perfectionist. Perfectionism is one of the major blocks to self-love, because, and I see it again in a lot of high achievers, is that whatever they do, it's just not good enough. It doesn't matter what external achievements you have. It doesn't matter how many PhDs you get. It doesn't matter, how big your home is. There's always this emptiness and the search and striving for more. So there's a huge, like, there again, it's black and white, I would say. The difference between being overconfident, that generally, like, comes from a place of insecurity, that you're looking for attention.
Chat to me about self-talk and negative self-talk. I'm sure lots of people listening in will be practicing negative self-talk, and how damaging that can be.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you think about a car, like, when you go to bed at night, right? I was going to say, who do you go to bed with? But it sounds a little bit, obviously your lovely wife, but who's there with you all the time when you wake up in the morning, when you're going about your day? It is the voice in your mind, right? And what you want is that voice, Carl, is one that is supportive and kind and proud of you. And again, it's when that voice is very critical. It could be coming from maybe a critical parent when you were younger, or siblings, or school, and that you have now actually sort of transferred that voice into your own one. So when you look at it, you start to see connections of, oh my goodness, I sound like, the way maybe a parent used to speak to me, or compare me to others. So we really want to get a space between ourselves and the voice in our mind. So a lot of the work, like I'm a mindfulness coach as well, so a lot of the work that I do is grounded, like so much, in the practice of presence and awareness. Because when you get a space between yourself and your thoughts, you're able to actually really um, use that space to examine, what way are you speaking to yourself? And I'm sure you've probably heard it before, but it is useful. It's like, would you ever speak to anyone else like that? The chances are you wouldn't have many friends, or your family would be fleeing if you spoke, to other people in the way that many people do in their own minds. So creating a space between your thoughts is absolutely paramount.
We couldn't have a chat like this without discussing social media.
Mm.
In terms of self-love, and potentially in terms of negative self-talk, I don't look like that person. That person has a perfect life. Oh my God, look at them, look at their friends, all that. Talk to me a little bit about that, about maybe the dangers of it, and the impact of it.
I think it's huge, Carl. I think it really is. And I think that, it's something that, again, comes back to awareness. We need to be really mindful of not becoming servants to social media. And I think it's a great thing. I'm on Instagram. I love it, but it's got to be used in a way that actually makes the world lighter and brings, joy and help to people. When it becomes a place of toxicity and comparisons, you need to notice how you feel, what's happening in your body when you're, let's say, scrolling and comparing. So I would say that if anyone is struggling with low self-esteem, you know it's so important to actually create a practical habit where you are staying off it as much as you possibly can. You're not following people that who are sort of portraying the perfect world, but you're following people that are actually there to help you. Another tip that I think, just on a practical level, is great is, like, you'll remember, Carl, the landlines, and when you literally couldn't take a phone out of a room. So it can be real.
That makes me
Do you
feel
remember
very
that?
old now, by the way. I'm 40. I'm not 70. Yeah, anyway, go on.
Yeah, but you do remember them, right?
I
And
do, I do.
and yeah, yeah. Well, I'm much older than you. I'm 46, right? And I remember them very well. And the point is that, if you wanted to be on the phone, you went into a room, and you couldn't physically move. So it's useful to actually start that habit again. So let's say your phone lives in one room. So you're not carrying it around with you, because all of that, just constant scrolling and checking, is really detrimental to our mental health. And just recently, on the retreat I've been on, we had a policy where there was very limited light phone use. And I can tell you now, the difference it made was really significant. So we need to do that for ourselves wherever we are.
And of course, remind ourselves with a little bit of self love that it's not always real, and it's, for every photograph you may see from influencers, they may be taking 20 and picking the best one, or maybe edited, and that, how you are is good enough, and how you are is okay, and just reminding yourself with that self love kind of angle of, you're doing great.
Absolutely, Carl. Yeah, I know Roz Purcell is great at that. And I love, she's somebody that is fantastic at showing the real, her. And people like that are wonderful, because they are showing what it's like to be a human being. We're all human beings. And just be mindful of who you follow, I suppose, would be important.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we've really brought people into this concept of self love. We've taken the I suppose some people may see it as being slightly, what's the word I would use, fluffy for want of a better word. We've certainly taken them out of that, and hopefully we've encouraged them to do it. Remind us, I suppose, and hammer home the benefits of it. So, we've chatted through lots of them. I just want to remind people what the benefits of it will deliver to your life, that by doing it, what are you going to see? What are the improvements that you're going to feel?
To be honest, Carla, it's going to benefit every single component of your life. So if you look at the world in terms of your internal world and your external world, when you're really transforming that internal world from, a place of self-loathing into self-love, you're at peace with yourself. When you're at peace with yourself and at ease with yourself, the choices you make in your external world are going to be much more in line with your values. You're going to be more likely to put yourself forward, to take risks, to go outside of your comfort zone. You are in a position where you no longer care about what other people think about you. I love this phrase, to be independent of the good opinion of others. It was Wayne Dyer who spoke about that, that you can just be completely at ease with yourself, that praise, let's be honest, we all like it. It's lovely to hear it, but it doesn't land, Carl, unless it's echoed inside, and that is something that many people experience. They could be up there getting the Oscar, but inside, if they don't have a voice that mirrors that, I'm proud of you in your own internal voice, it really doesn't mean anything. So essentially, it transforms your ability to flourish, to reach your potential, to self-actualize, your relationships, really transform. I've noticed that in my own personal life and again, my clients, how what were once tumultuous relationships become really sources of love and joy.
Sold. I think you've sold it to every single listener who's listening in.
I hope so. I hope so.
I can't imagine how you wouldn't have done. If people want to find you, that sounds very scary. If people want to find you online, where can they find you?
Instagram is probably the best. It's basically, if you just put in The Positive Habit, you'll find me. There's a few underscores in there, but you will find me on that. And also my website is thepositivehabit.com.
Fiona, wonderful to catch up as always. Go and work in the suntan after your retreat. Enjoy every bit of it. Folks, that's it for another episode of Real Health with me, Carl Henry, in association with Leia Healthcare. You know where we are, at Carl Henry PT on Instagram. And don't forget to rate and review if you've liked what you've listened to. We'll see you next week for more Real Health. Slán go fóill.
Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Carl Henry.